Hey everyone. Thanks for joining us at this breakout session. Kayla, I don't know if you want to go ahead and start.
Sure, I can start. I'm Kayla Moss. I'm a product enablement manager here at IDBS.
And I'm Bryce Fothergill, a data scientist with the product enablement team. And we have both been here for about 3 years now.
And today we are going to talk about extracting insight from your data. So we're going to give you a demo of the Unicorn integration via an OPC connector. So you'll be able to see data flowing from Unicorn itself into the spreadsheet via the data backbone, and then coming out into Polar Insight, our analytics tool. All right, so to start off with a quick agenda of what we're going to be showing you today, we're going to start off with a recap of the benefits of integration that you saw in Craig's presentation yesterday, in case you weren't able to see that, or just to give you a brief overview of what that was about. We'll then dive into what we are calling the integrations road trip. So we will make several stops along the way from instrument to insight to give you a deeper dive into each step of this integration. So we'll start with Unicorn itself, then we'll move into the data backbone and see how that plays a role in integrations. Then we'll move into the workflow within the spreadsheet. And then finally, we will end at Polar Insight, where you will see the data analytics. After that, we will cover the use of integration in the lab. So you've heard a lot about integrations, about Unicorn specifically as well. So we'll dive even deeper into why integrations are so useful and the benefits of that. And then finally, we will leave some time for Q&A. So again, we're going to cover a bit of the recap of the benefits of integrations. So yesterday, Craig gave a presentation talking about the flow of data in and out, what that looks like, and IDBS's strategy for integrations. He gave three main benefits. The first being that integrations support bigger data sets and more data types. So with more and more data that you're able to access, that gives you greater insight for things later down the road. The second main benefit is that integrations serve as a sort of stepping stone towards improved automation. So the end goal of labs is to have that end-to-end automation. And with integrations, this allows you to not have to do things like manual entry in the spreadsheet. So that's a faster end-to-end system. And finally, integrations allow for simplified management and configuration. So without integrations, you might have data in several places, but with integrations, you have this end-to-end system, and data management becomes much easier to work with. All right, so now that we have a bit of overview of what we covered yesterday, we're going to dive into our integration road trip. So we will start with the Unicorn instrument and move all the way to Insight.
Beep, beep.
All right, so like I said, we're going to cover Unicorn. We will see the Unicorn interface, what the data looks like in Unicorn, and also see a bit of preparation within Polar and within the spreadsheet. So first, we're going to cover what even is Unicorn for those who may not know. So Unicorn is Cytiva's control software program that is used for AKTA chromatography systems. It enables automated protein purification and biomolecule separation workflows. It also offers some real-time monitoring of parameters, including UV absorbance, which we'll see, conductivity, and pressure. It includes some powerful evaluation tools for analyzing chromatograms and calculating things like purity and yield. With all that being said, that's a lot of information, but if you only take away one thing from this slide, it is that the main data output of Unicorn is chromatography run data, and that is what we will see throughout the rest of this presentation. Now to give a little bit of background about what actually happens in the workflow, we are going to see the preparative chromatography accelerator that we have built. This is just one example of a way a user might use this spreadsheet for chromatography runs. It's not necessarily the one answer, the end-all be-all, but it's the example that we are going to follow today to see this integration. Also, I'm going to go into a lot more detail of each of these points in the coming demo, but just to give you an overview of what actually happens in the spreadsheet. First, we're going to set up the chromatography run and enter some starting materials, things like that. We will then import the unicorn data directly into the spreadsheet. We'll register the fractions to inventory, and finally do some data capture. So, like I just said, we're going to start with some chromatography run setup. Before I press play on this demo, what you are going to see is the user enter some starting materials for the run, some column details from inventory, optionally equipment, materials, and preparations that they may use. All of this may look familiar to what Sylvia and Matt presented earlier, and then preparation of the feedstock with material pooling. So, in this demo, you can see that the user has queried a starting material, also a column, and then we can see some materials have been added to the inventory tab, a preparation has been made, and then in the material pooling, they have pooled together. There's only one starting material in this example, so they've said how much of that is added to the pool, and then they have created this pool, which is serving as the feedstock for the chromatography run. So that is just some setup in the spreadsheet. Now we're going to move into Unicorn and what that interface looks like and the data that will be collected from there. So again, what you're going to see here is a chromatography run that was used to purify a drug product from a process intermediate. You'll see a plot of UV absorbance as well as a run log. And then we'll see how easily exportable this data is in CSV format. But it is also important to understand the limitations of the data that is in Unicorn. So here is the Unicorn interface. We are going to open up one of the runs we did for chromatography. And here we can see a plot of UV absorbance. The user might also select some other parameters to view desired. It's important to here take a mental screenshot of what you're seeing, as this is going to come up again when we look at Polar Insight, as the data will be in a similar format, but we'll see how Insight gives us a bit more flexibility than Unicorn is currently giving us. Now we are going to open up some run data. We'll see the run log here. It's a bit blurry, but it's a list of a bunch of times and events that happened at each of these times. It's just in a list format, so it's not the most digestible, not the most readable. Then in just a second, probably talking a bit faster than this demo is going, but we'll see the user export some data into a CSV file. This will be opened up in just a second, but the main takeaway of this data is that it is not super readable, not super digestible. You'll see here, it's just kind of a bunch of numbers of the fraction data and the run log. You can't really do much with this without a lot of manual work. So that's why the integration is so important, because it takes this data directly into the spreadsheet and then directly into the backbone and allows you to do a lot more with it than what you can do here. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Bryce to talk about the data backbone.
Thank you, Kayla. And yeah, that's so ugly. But we're going to go to stop 2 on our road trip, which is the data backbone. So as Kayla mentioned, there's a lot of data within Unicorn that we are grabbing via the OPC connector into the integration and going right into our data backbone. Before we dive deeper into the integration, I do want to just give a quick overview of the Polar data backbone. Additionally, with that integration data, we also have experiment data. We have inventory data within there. We have process data, literally everything here, your operational data, you can grab that from the data backbone. So it all lives in one place within the one system, and bringing the Unicorn integration into the fold, it just adds that value to the data backbone of what we can bring to you all and what data you can access. So with integrating to the data backbone, specifically with Unicorn, the number one thing is right there at the top. It being a direct integration with Unicorn via the OPC connector means no manual importing, no cleaning the data, no transforming the data. We're eliminating that middleman, and we are just having that ugly data stay to the side that you saw in that last video, and it's immediately transformed into our data backbone. Removes a huge layer of work on you, and it is automated, through this process and through this integration. Secondly, it is performance friendly. So, with older imports, integration file imports, for example, like Matt talked about earlier, if you're trying to surface a lot of data in the spreadsheet, that can significantly slow that spreadsheet down. I'm sure some of you are probably aware of that. So by being able to selectively surface the data, which Kayla will show later, we're able to avoid spreadsheet overload, hopefully keep it performant like you'd expect it, so the user does not get bored as you see the loading. Next is centralized permission-based access. So anyone that has access to the data backbone, that has access to this integration, will be able to have their data when they need it and where they want it, to use it for whatever they want it for, whether that's data out through Polar Insight, whether that's data out in a third-party BI tool, they have access to that immediately. It allows for cross-functional collaboration as well, because people can see it without actually having to go to Unicorn, grab that data, and bring it to wherever it needs to be. Next, it's structured for analytics. Like I've said, the transforming's done. It is well structured in that data backbone for analytics down the line. Whether that's AI and ML processes that you want to implement, we can do that. Or if it's more of a simple reporting dashboard through Polar Insight, or even utilizing the data science engine, which I will touch on later, that's a possibility now because of how well structured the data is. And then lastly, but definitely not least, IDBS's bread and butter, governance and compliance. By using Alcoa principles, we want it to be integral. We want the data to make sense. We don't want you to have to worry about what happened in between when I did it in Unicorn and when I'm uploading some file. Who changed what? I don't want to worry with that. So by using that direct integration, you don't have to worry about that middleman. Like I said, there's no cleaning, manual importing, none of that. And it just means for a better Alcoa compliant space. And that's all thanks to the data backbone and this integration. And next, I will hand it back over to you, Kayla, for stop number 3.
Awesome. So now we're going to dive a bit deeper into the accelerator and see this flow of data into the spreadsheet. Before I play this video, what you are about to see is a data import via the data source manager, which is going to automatically populate process description and fraction data. And then from there, with that data, you can enter some sample information for each fraction and register this data to inventory. So in this video, we're going to open up the data importer, which is a tool similar to Inventory Quick Finder within the web editor. Then this will open up the data source manager. This is a new end user interface tool that is used for both administrative purposes of connecting to the integration, and it also allows users to actually add and select this data. So that's what you're seeing here, a user selecting this run data and importing it into the data importer. And then from there, we're able to actually add it into the spreadsheet. So once this is queried here, we will then see this data automatically populate into the spreadsheet. We can now see the process description data shows up. So we can see the steps and stages of the chromatography run. Now we can go through the spreadsheet as intended. We can add things like buffers. So here we're selecting a buffer from a list of materials that we created earlier. And then we can add starting and final percentages of these buffers. Once those are entered, we're going to move to the fractions tab. And again, you can see all of the fractions from Unicorn automatically populated into the spreadsheet. We're going to add a number of samples for each fraction. We can add things like sampling date and time, the volume of each sample, and the location ID if desired. Once all this is populated, then we are going to register these fractions to inventory. The important thing here is that registering these fractions creates this genealogical link between the fractions and the feedstock that we started with. This is important because this genealogical link then connects to the data backbone, which can then be used for things like Insight, which Bryce will touch on shortly. So here you can see it in inventory. And once we close out of that, we'll move to the sample measurements tab. For time's sake, I'm not going to show actually entering this data, but within the spreadsheet, you can move through it as intended, and you can enter some ad hoc sample measurements if desired. And that's about it for the spreadsheet side of things. Now passing back to Bryce for Polar Insight.
Awesome, thank you. So we have arrived at the last stop of the road trip, Polar Insight. So for those of you who are not aware with what Polar Insight is, it is our analytics engine within Polar. It's a separate module within Polar where we have all of these Polar Insight apps that talk to a wide variety of things. We have a wide-ranging pre-built Insight app library, talk to operational efficiency, they talk to inventory, they talk to preparative chromatography, which we'll touch on later. And so Insight itself is very robust. We also have a lot of apps that touch AI and ML through the data science engine, which I know I mentioned a little bit earlier. That data science engine performs deeper statistical analyses than what you would normally see, just directly within a BI tool. So we have those capabilities, and we do multivariate analysis. We do some DOE, which I know Matt touched on briefly with his Polar Control demo earlier, in the modular spreadsheet side of things and their workflow wizardry presentation. Additionally, with Polar Insight, we're reducing your reliance on other BI tools by having everything in one place. You don't have to jump from one system to another with Polar Insight. It's all directly within the platform, and it's all connected via the data backbone. So it reduces also your data alignment aspect. Having all that data, your integrations data, your operational data, all right there for you. You can bring that up to the insight layer, actually visualize it and see, gain some kind of insight, I guess, from the app. I use Insight way too much. It's a thing. But not only do we have pre-built applications, we also have a great professional services organization who are equipped to deliver custom Insight apps as well. So if our pre-built applications don't meet your needs, we can definitely create what you need out of Polar Insight. So that's a little bit of the basics on Polar Insight. Next, we'll actually dive deeper into that preparative chromatography Insight app that connects to the integration. It also speaks to the workflow that Kayla mentioned, but it's not a necessary link. Since we are using the data backbone, you can immediately go from Unicorn straight to this Insight app if you'd like and completely skip the workflow aspect to see your chromatography data. So first, we're going to click on the preparative chromatography app, and it's going to bring you to the UV absorbance dashboard. This one, you have a lot of filters here. You can filter as many chromatography runs as you'd like, stage, chromatogram, analysis type, and that analysis range. So the user really has a lot of flexibility here in their filtering. This first graph is the UV absorbance plot that you see in Unicorn, but this is, it has multiple chromatography runs right there within that absorbance plot, which you can't easily do directly within Unicorn. So there's a lot of flexibility there. You can highlight certain chromatography runs if you want to dive deeper. There are plenty of tooltips with the actual data right there at your fingertips. Additionally, we have this heat map on the other side that dives deeper into the visuals of, what the absorbance looking like for each run. You can actually click on any of the runs that have a workflow connected to it, and it'll take you directly to that workflow within Polar. So if you need to dive deeper, if you see some deviation that you want to look into the spreadsheet, see what's happening, you can do that, and it immediately takes you there. So if we go right back to the Insight app, down below, we have the multi-axis plot. Another way that this app is much more flexible than what you see in Unicorn. You can select any parameters that you'd like. So for instance, UV absorbance and like system pressure, for example. We can look into how these parameters interact and correlate with the chromatography runs that you are looking at in that moment using that filtering panel at the top left. So with this, you can see those correlations. You can start to dive deeper into what you may want to look into to, help fine tune those chromatography runs in the future. And hopefully see, if you need to change any specific parameters, what you may need to change them to help that fine tuning aspect. And as you can see, all of this is very interactive. We have a lot of tooltip information that gives you more information about the stage that it's in, the chromatogram, et cetera. So a lot can be done right here. And again, this is what we've built. If you have other ideas, if you're a chromatography master, bring it on. The world's your oyster with this. Next is the parameter comparison dashboard. With this, you can dive deeper into one singular run. And it's really all about looking at those correlations, the parameters between any of them, whether that's UV absorbance or if you just want to look at the correlations between specific parameters, you can do that as well. So we have similar filters up at the top as the first one. And then we have this parameter selector here at the top right of the top dashboard, top visual. And you can select whichever parameters you'd like. So system pressure, conductivity, concentration, et cetera. And you'll see those populate there on the parameter trend chart. This is, again, great to see those correlations. You can really see and dive deeper into the values. Maybe, something really sticks out to you. You need to go look and, decide what you need to do for your next run based on that. And then similar to the first dashboard, but just on a singular run level, this multi-axis plot, again, gives the user the flexibility to look into two parameters at once and sort of, cross-analyze what they are seeing in these line plots with what they're expecting from the data. Again, the real thing that I want to drive home here is that you can't do all this in Unicorn itself. It's very one-dimensional in terms of you'll always see that UV absorbance line plot. You can select maybe one parameter, but in this you can select multiple. You can select multiple runs, whatever you desire, honestly. And again, we have a couple runs here, but however many runs you're running within Unicorn, because we're connected to the data backbone, you're going to see those populate in this app. Yeah, that's the preparative chromatography app as it stands at this moment. And this is just another quick run through of everything you just saw. So I'm not going to, reiterate everything. Key takeaways here: spotting trends and outliers, huge. It's super important, especially across runs. You can't do that with any Unicorn itself. So being able to do that on a run level is a huge advantage to this. You kind of easily identified fail runs as well, visualizing peaks, anomalies, understanding those correlations, fine-tuning your runs for the future. And then another key one, the interactive filtering and linking. Because it's all connected through the data backbone, we're able to link back to records within Polar, and you can go back and forth between the Insight app, what you're seeing there, and what you may want to dive deeper into on the workflow side. Awesome. And then finally, you've seen this plenty of times by now, benefits of integrations in the lab. We just want to summarize, hopefully what you've seen through Craig's presentation, others' presentations regarding these benefits, and from our perspective, what we think with the workflow and the Insight app, what makes this integration great. Number one, first and foremost, it eliminates the data handling, the wrangling, frees up your scientists' time. It reduces errors. You no longer have to worry about that. That is done for you through the integration. Next, improving data integrity and compliance. Again, since you're removing that middle layer, you don't have to worry about the integrity piece. It's all done for you via the OBC connector integration, and it is nicely structured as well. You don't have to worry about all the transforming that no one wants to do. I want to do it because I'm a data scientist, but you don't have to. Next, it unlocks real-time access across teams. You don't want to spend your time doing this. We're freeing up that time for you to do more important aspects of your job. And then finally, especially with the integration going into the data backbone and also coming out from the Polar Insight side, all of those things coming together really accelerates your decision making. Without all those pieces, you can't really accelerate any kind of decision making. You don't know what you're looking at step by step. But with everything coming together, you can truly see how you can identify, fine-tune things to make the runs better in the future, and hopefully take some time out of your day to do more important aspects of your job. And we have arrived at our destination finally, and that destination is Q&A. So yeah, so thank you guys for spending time with us this morning, and more than happy to answer it.
Thanks very much, Bryce and Kayla. So we have loads of time for questions, but if we do run out of questions and we're not ready for the 11:30 start, we do have to wait for the other breakout session to finish. So you'll be able to go and have a quick comfort break or whatever to be back here for 11:30. But first of all, let's take any questions.
Hi. Do you just use CSV files or can you use file files?
So the way that the integration works, it's using an OPC connector, which is a generic connector that connects to a lot of different instruments, softwares. So it's not actually the CSV that we're using here. It's using that integration. So we showed the CSV as like, this is how ugly it is, right? This is what you don't want to use. And so, yeah, in terms of the data and where we're pulling it from, it's all from that integration through the backbone. But yeah, that's.
So that would move to, we use a lot of scouting sets in process characterization, and people use method queues in Unicorn to run a lot of runs together, but that be compatible?
That's maybe a great question for Craig. I don't know if Craig is here. Oh, hey, Craig, look at that.
Yeah, sorry, I think the simple answer is not yet. I mean, that's something we'd definitely be interested to explore. At the current time, we're really just looking at getting that data out so we can drive these insight and analytic pathways. But yeah, let's maybe catch up in the break and get into deeper detail on what you're looking for. Thank you.
And therefore, you can import. Can you export from Insight?
Yes, you can. So you can export the data that you're seeing, like throughout that video. All of the underlying data there you can export. All of our Insight apps, or most of them, if not all yet, have an export button at the top where you can click that. You can export that data into a CSV if you so please. But you can export it in any way. You can also export the actual visuals, right? So if you want to take those visuals, paste them into some report, you can do that, PDF, etc. So all of that is easily exportable.
Hi. So I know you said that to get things on the Insight portal, there's things there, or you have to talk to GPS. Is there a way that we could do that work ourselves?
So Nick, how do you want to take this, or can I take it? Okay, so that is on the roadmap, right? So currently it's sort of, just through GPS, through us, with the pre-built and custom applications. But the idea eventually is, yes, you can add your own Insight app that makes sense to you and what you're working with. But yeah, in the meantime, unless Nick, you have anything else to add, that's sort of where it is at this moment.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Jen.
Thanks for the info. Looks good. You talk about Unicorn. Is there any work that's being done or things being looked at with other CDS systems? So things like Empower, OpenLab, Chromeleon?
So in terms of Empower, we do have an integration currently, but it's not using like the OPC connector like you saw with the Unicorn. So that is something with the OPC connector. That's why we chose that. And I know Craig touched a little bit on that yesterday. But the idea there is that the Unicorn's the first step. And then after that, we can sort of build on that using that same generic connector, making it easier. And we could do all of this that we just presented with Unicorn with any of those other instruments as well.
Thanks.
Of course.
One question to this OPC connector. How is that technically working?
Well, I could answer it. I could also give that to Craig. I don't know, Craig,
Maybe
it sort of
it's-
goes with your presentation.
Just
Maybe easier.
to precise it a little bit more, maybe it's more related. It's more related regarding firewalls and running locally on the application server. It's going more in this direction.
Thank you for that clarification. That helps a lot. Yeah. So the way it works is through, we're calling it an integrations gateway. So really it's a specific technology component that still has to live on premise, right? And that's done deliberately to essentially eliminate the challenges you've just spoken about. So we saw with a lot of some of our older interfaces developed in the on-premise era, if you like, before we were really a cloud organization. Now we know we can port these and run them in a cloud context, but that's really all we're doing, right? We're just kind of making them work with a cloud product. Now this is entirely different, entirely new technology underpinning it, specifically chosen from our tech partner at Amazon, AWS, to use their recommended pathway, their recommended toolkit for bridging that on-premise to cloud, that gap, right? So the tech, the bit that I spoke about yesterday, which was not in this presentation, is really the framework to enable that that seamless bridge of communication between an agent, a gateway which runs on premise, and pull that data directly into the backbone as and when the user triggers that through their workflow.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So one question. Do you have on your roadmap integration with a solution like TetraScience? Because this is also the goal to ingest a lot of different kind of data. And if there is a connection with TetraScience, that we can have kind of directly with one connection.
It's not a roadmap item. We actually did it about 5 years ago, I think. Now, this was originally something we worked on with TetraScience in collaboration. So actually myself and some developers at TetraScience worked together to build this connector. Now, originally it was done just as a POC. So a lot of the work we do is really done in that kind of try it and see what we can do, see what sort of value we get from it. The POC was built, we put it up on YouTube, and then we see who bites. And one of our big customers did bite and said, this is something we have great interest in, and we'd like to take it forward. So at that point, we gave all our code away to TetraScience, and they decided to take it forward. So they now maintain what they call their IDBS connector. So that is something that I didn't tell you the exact number, but certainly a good few of our big enterprise customers are now doing that, and that's a deliberate decision they make to work with a third-party integrator. And there's a few similar organizations to TetraScience that you can work with if you choose. Now, maybe one thing to qualify on that, though, that is an integration directly into our spreadsheet, right? So I suppose some of the limitations that we're aware of that we wanted to address with this new framework, that will still suffer from, but it is still absolutely a perfectly usable and serviceable tool. And there's a lot of customers out there doing exactly, I think, what it is that you've probably got in mind right now.
I was referring to see in the data source. So that if there is a connection with a database of kind of solution, it means that we can see a different kind of data source instead of ingesting data science in IDBS multiple times. Avoid multiple injection of same kind of raw data.
I think the actual user interface is subtly different, but conceptually it's more or less the same. So you'll have seen in the demo today, something slides in from the side. The user navigates, finds their data, clicks what they want, and brings it in. So those level of concepts are essentially the same, but I mean, fundamentally, if we get into how it's working under the hood, it's slightly different. But I think the end result you get to is basically the same thing.
Just to build on that, because Ben was just made me think of a question. So could you have, if you had a data repository that was standard, so something like TDP and Tetra, could you then have a standard connector to that, to the backbone, and then use insight against the data that's coming from there?
I think absolutely. I mean, the framework that we've built out, and this is kind of our initial release, right? So we put OPC Unicorn in there first, but it's designed to extend. So if, for example, we had a use case, we had a customer who wanted to work with us on that, absolutely, or even a partner, right? That's something we could work on together to make that connector to or whatever that goes into that box.
Okay, thanks.
Have you ever considered also the ligand bindings action with use bindings?
I'm sorry, could I ask you to say that one? I just couldn't quite hear what you said.
Sorry. Have you ever considered the ligand binding also? It's for the chromatogram and you use the Unicorn software, but for ligand binding, there is Softmax Pro, there is other there. To the Backbone.
So was the question about combining data from different software systems?
Yeah, because here everything is more chromatography based, and we don't use for chromatography. How does it apply for the other platform?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's kind of I guess this is more of a workflow.
I guess from the other sides, I touched on it a little bit, but I think even for ligand binding, for instance, with our workflows, even future integrations, we can take that data, both of those, and bring them into an Insight app. So again, this is just like purely an example of what we could do and what we can do currently, but what we could also do in the future with more integrations and what we also can do currently with our workflows. So we have ligand binding specific workflows that do talk to Insight apps, bring through that specific data. So yeah, it's not just chromatography. That's just currently what we're showing here today. But the Insight apps that you have access to range from, like I said, we have biowaste study reports. Matt and Sylvia mentioned that, biopiece study reports, and then deeper dives into more specific areas of science throughout that. And we continue to sort of build that library up as well as the workflow library as well.
I think that might be it for the question. So thank you very much, Kayla, Bryce, and Craig as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.